When taking a look at Dune's Spice Wars, a number of factions pop up, but none stand out as vicious, vile, and evil as House Harkonnen. This is without a doubt my personal favorite faction in the Dune universe, and I want to tell you a little bit about them, allow you to get to know this faction. Now, number one, they have this oppression ability. You might wonder, well, what is an oppression ability? The fact is, the Harkonnens are known as pretty evil overlords, and few people want to work for them for fear of death or worse. And that being said, you actually get a 10% production penalty as the Harkonnens. However, using your oppression ability, you can force villagers for a limited amount of time to actually work much harder than they typically would to generate more and more income for the Harkonnens. Also, due to their ability at espionage, intel gathering, everything in between, and all those dark arts, they know the influence flow of every other faction, and that alone is a pretty epic ability for a faction to have. But let's jump into House Harkonnen, my friends, and let's see exactly what we can do with these particular fighters and how we can succeed in the world of Dune. This, of course, the great Baron Harkonnen himself will be our leader, and you get two starting counselors over here, everything from Fade, it's actually represented in the movies, Peter DeVry, Rabban Harkonnen, and Yakin Nefud. Now, I actually recommend those that are beginning with House Harkonnen to take Rabban Harkonnen, and the reason being you get +1 militia slot. Typically, with the other factions, militia are used to defend your villages, and while that's all well and good, the only faction that actually increases its production value for having militia are the Harkonnens. In other words, if you've got militia in your towns, they're going to force the people to work as hard as they can for you. Well, enough talk. Let's have a look at their units. In Dune Spice Wars, every town has its own militia that you can actually pay for. And the Harkonnen militia, again, pretty typical, nothing special in comparison to the others. You've got ranged units, you've got standard militia, etc., and very effective demolition militia. And over here, there we go. These are our troopers. In fact, you could call these the most basic Harkonnen trooper. If you're in any Harkonnen city or territory, you're going to be seeing a bunch of them. Of course, I tried to go for something a little deadlier, which is why we got all these Vanguard units. And even here, we don't have the elite of the Harkonnen army. But let's charge in and try to take this village and see just how these evil beings operate. Well, let's get this attack going and see just how the Harkonnens deal with any sort of resistance. You'll see the ranged units will remain behind, while all of these close combat units will get right up close and personal with the enemy. But there is going to be some of that friendly fire that I mentioned before. In fact, I'll try to come in with the troopers over on this side. And over here, we've got House Atreides troops. A bit different, not nearly as dark and sort of foreboding as House Harkonnen, I don't believe. But if you enjoy this lore video, then make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment down below, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, so that we do a House Atreides lore video. You can see the Harkonnens are very hostile. They have a sort of immediate berserk blitzkrieg ability. They attack quickly, they capture quickly, and they are extraordinarily violent. Perfect for a starting player here in Spice Wars. Now, House Harkonnen is all about power and control. It's also quite a lot about violence and espionage. But you can see that a lot of House Harkonnen's faction bonuses are reliant on hegemony. Hegemony is essentially how much respect your faction has in the world of Dune. And you can see right now, House Atreides, the Smugglers, the Fremen, they all have quite a bit more hegemony than I do. I didn't really make it a very big focus in this particular playthrough, but you certainly should. Because, of course, you get plus 10 unit power, plus 100% agent recruitment speed, and once we get into the actual agents of House Harkonnen, you know, that's an entirely different story. They're actually extremely good at espionage. They tend to get a lot of these new agents to drop around the world of Arrakis. So just something to consider and think about, that you absolutely want to make use of that hegemony boost, but also make use of the espionage boost that the Harkonnens clearly have here. The Harkonnen main base, or let's call it the administrative center here of House Harkonnen, has a tremendous amount of buildings that not only affect, of course, the military prowess here, adding 20% health for military units and 50% experience gains. I mean, just excellent stuff here for the House Harkonnen barracks, and also an amazing amount of intel buildings here. You can see we really do want to go for influence and hegemony production as House Harkonnen, and with this administrative hall, you can make that happen. So despite them being a very aggressive, a very violent group of people, they do know how to play the political game fairly well. They also know how to play the economic game fairly well, and if you're going for a sort of science focus where you want to unlock tech as quickly as possible, you're going to want to get this research center. Of course, none of this is free. 1,500 gold is quite a lot, but if you can afford it, well, then you can have it. Now, if we take a look at the Harkonnen research tree, we've got everything from water cellars, composite materials, and we'll just kind of go down these so that you can pause and take a look if you'd like. A lot to do with spice processing, of course. Most of the Harkonnen leaders are completely addicted to the stuff, primarily the Baron himself. So that's something to keep in mind. But I'm not sure, I'm truly not sure if each faction has a different developmental tree, although I would be shocked if they didn't. And certainly the Harkonnen one has a lot to do with trying to garner fear amongst the local population so that they follow us, and also increasing that spice production. And just on time, we've got a group of raiders come to test our defenses. I can't wait to let them know what that's like. Now, I mentioned in the start of this video that militia in Harkonnen settlements actually give a production boost. So I should have already had militia going, but I'm going to start purchasing some to make sure that we get as much as we can out of these towns. You can see, though, how nice these Harkonnens are doing in the fight. These are fairly fresh units, but once again, that gunnery unit is causing a lot of damage over here already, or did cause a lot of damage initially. That seems to have toned down now that he's focused on this unit over here. But they do have their drawbacks, and a lack of interest in their own men and accidentally killing them may be one of the Harkonnens' issues. Let's just say they're not too appreciative of life. At least not life that isn't directly serving their purpose. But there we go, clearing them out pretty quickly, and you can see sort of the Harkonnen combat approach, which is mostly that close combat with blades. They like to get up close and personal to kill their enemies. They do the same with their espionage abilities, their spy abilities. They get in there behind the enemy and kill them, stab them as quickly as possible. That's just the Harkonnen way, the backstab. The Harkonnen ability for political influence also extends to corruption, and Fade Harkonnen here is a perfect example of that. Essentially, he's got this corruption ability, which makes a specific faction lose standing in the Landsraad. I don't entirely understand it yet, but essentially, we've got this governing body, let's call it Space UN, for lack of a better term, called the Landsraad Council. And of course, each of us get a vote on this Landsraad Council. And of course, because of that corruption ability, we can actually lower the importance of certain factions during certain votes, making it easier for us to pass resolutions that are favorable to the Harkonnen. Oh my goodness, that looks like a nasty storm. Let's get out of here quickly. The Harkonnens can withstand a lot, but unfortunately, no special bonus against bad weather. Just like any faction, however, when they are completely overrun, as they are here, there is very little that the Harkonnens can do. This is a good example of our militia actually fighting back, and I would say of all the militias that I've tried in the game, House Harkonnens do seem to be up there. I wouldn't say, well, actually I would say the best so far that I've seen. And hopefully that's enough to even fight off an attack like this. A really massive attack by House Atreides, of course. Again, I love those gunners. They do a tremendous amount of damage despite hurting our own units as well. You can see the militia is starting to get a little weaker, but I actually think we're going to come out on this. And you saw the beginning of this fight. We were absolutely outnumbered, but now it seems like we're going to come out on top thanks to the militia as well, and also a well-placed missile battery. As you can imagine, the Harkonnens have a lot of great defensive units like that missile battery. They also have a lot of units that increase knowledge, and more importantly, units like this research hub, excuse me, that don't increase knowledge. Units like this maintenance center that will actually lower the cost, the Solari cost of everything. Because if you take a look there, it's expensive to keep processing plants up, fuel cell factories, wind traps, all of the necessities. But as long as you have these bureaucratic buildings and administrative buildings of the Harkonnens, they're very efficient when it comes to this. And you can see that they've got kind of a dark look to all their buildings. It kind of looks like something out of Terminator almost, whereas House Atreides buildings are a lot prettier, more open, as you can see, like a utopia almost. No, we won't have any of that. Just basic stuff, thank you very much. Sort of the Soviets of the Dune universe. So in short, if you're looking for really, really spicy intel gathering, you know, aka a lot of espionage and spying, and if you're looking for a very aggressive, I guess, fast faction, and one that exudes supreme control, then I would absolutely go with the Harkonnens. Downsides? Well, let's face it, I mean, they're definitely the bad guys. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please like, leave a comment, and maybe subscribe to us to catch future lore videos. In fact, you do me a huge favor if you could just tell me in the comments what is the next lore video you want to see.